for me, this movie came, it feels like it came at the exact perfect time in my career, in my life. It felt almost nostalgic, like the first movie I ever got. Favorite movie? What's a favorite? Well, okay, I'll start with Rob. I would say, there's a huge body of work, but I would say Josh and Benny's movie, Good Time. That was
that
awesome.
is amazing.
Because I think you came on everybody's radar in those huge movies, and you were in the middle of that firestorm of paparazzi, and you know, you were the heartthrob and all of that stuff, and then suddenly it was like, gone.
Nobody hands you a Christopher Nolan movie. You earn it. And the cast of the Odyssey, Robert Pattinson, Tom Holland, Matt Damon, just pulled back the curtain on what it actually cost them to be part of it. We're talking about a film shot entirely on IMAX, practical locations across Iceland, Italy, and Greece. No safety nets, no gadgets, no shortcuts. Just some of the most physically demanding filmmaking in modern Hollywood history. And a director who wouldn't ask anyone to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. This isn't a press junket soundbite reel. This is a real conversation. And what came out of it tells you everything about why this film matters, how these careers were shaped, and what separates a Christopher Nolan set from anything else happening in cinema right now. So let's break it all down. Let's start with Robert Pattinson, because his take on this film is genuinely striking. He didn't just show up to cash a check. He said this movie arrived at the exact perfect time in his career, that it felt nostalgic, almost like the first movie he ever got. And for someone who came up through the Twilight firestorm, the global paparazzi circus, the heartthrob label, the relentless tabloid attention, that's a meaningful thing to say. Because Pattinson didn't lean into the franchise machine. He went the other direction. He looked for interesting directors doing something different. And the first big example of that instinct paying off, the Safdie brothers.
I think meeting Josh and Benny, I saw this little picture from their previous movie. I was always kind of looking for kind of interesting new directors and stuff, and the image they'd chosen to promote it, I was certain they were going to say it was going to be an Eastern European director or something. I meant to find out they're from New York. I was like, oh, I just know. And then, yeah, meeting them, there was such a palpable energy around them that I just remember thinking, like, I think you just got to kind of hitch your horse to this. Is that the expression? Hitch your horse to the wagon?
Hitch your wagon to the horse.
So you can just feel it's like the train is a...
Josh and Benny, Good Time. He talked about seeing a single image used to promote their earlier work and being so struck by it, he assumed they must be some Eastern European art house directors. Then he found out they were from New York, and he said he just knew. He could feel the energy. He described it like spotting a stock before it explodes.
So, because you talk about like buying a stock low. Like, I mean, you look at those guys now, right, and they're just extraordinary, you know, and everybody knows it, but you were kind of the first on board.
The way they write dialogue, it just immediately makes you want to say it out loud, and like it's so rare to do, I kept wanting to read it to people in parties and stuff.
Right. That's a very good sign.
Yeah, and it was like, and everyone else was like, yeah, cool. I was like, you don't understand.
What was that story you told where you like read a cab driver? Didn't you read a cab driver a section from a movie you were doing?
Yeah.
You've definitely told me. It was like
I think I've done that a few times.
Hitching your wagon to the horse before the train leaves the station. That instinct for directors, it's clearly a through line in his whole career, and it's what led him to Nolan. Now, Matt Damon has a version of that same story, but his goes back further.
A lot of times. Yeah, but not, I'm trying to think if it that early on in their careers. When I was younger, Doug Liman had already done 2 terrific movies when I signed up for The Bourne Identity.
What had he done before Bourne?
He did Swingers for like $250,000, and then he did Go, which I think was a few $1 million, but it's still one of my favorite movies of his. It's a really, I just watched it again a few months ago. I showed my kids. It's fantastic.
Still a really interesting choice for Bourne at that time as well. It's like really cool.
Yeah, they were, you know, that to the studio's credit, they chose him and he created that whole franchise. That was all Doug in response to James Bond, funnily enough. He was just like, because at that time it was like, I think Piers was doing it. It was the late 90s, and Doug said, I just don't relate as an American to this guy, and I think we need our kind of guy, and he's kind of going to be the opposite in all these ways.
Yeah, I really feel like you shaped the genre with that film.
Yeah, Doug did.
He talked about signing on to the Bourne Identity when Doug Liman had only done Swingers and Go, a combined budget of maybe a few $1 million. The studio took a chance on Liman. Liman created an entire franchise, and the creative engine behind it all, a deliberate reaction against James Bond. Liman looked at the Pierce Brosnan-era Bond films and said, as an American, he simply didn't relate to that character. He wanted grounded. He wanted unglamorous settings, a bad car, no gadgets, a guy who just has to figure it out with whatever's around him. Damon described the Bourne script as one of the most unput-downable reads he's ever encountered. He's reread it multiple times, and he credits screenwriter Tony Gilroy, who famously never even read the source novel.
As I remember it too, the story was that Tony never read the book. Seriously,
Nice.
like he just heard the premise and he was literally like, got it. And then he kept the premise, which is kind of the engine for the movie, right? Like the guy's got amnesia and he doesn't know who he is and he starts to realize he has this skill set and he doesn't know what the hell's going on. So you keep that, but like everything else, none of that's from the book.
After years of war, no one could stand between my men.
Just heard the premise and said, got it, for building something entirely original from one compelling engine. A man with amnesia who slowly discovers he has a terrifying skill set. The parallel to the Odyssey isn't subtle. An ancient story, a man trying to find his way home through impossible circumstances. The premise is the engine. Everything else is craft. Tom Holland came into this conversation with a different energy.
I remember on Spider-Man 1, you know, in the UK, we really romanticize what the American high school life is like. You know, we watch movies and we see how fun it is and all that sort of stuff. And I secretly enrolled in the Bronx School of Science and went for like 2 weeks at this school.
Really?
I had like a fake accent. My chaperone pretended to be my dad and would like drop me off at school every day. And like, they're like the smartest kids in America. They're like genius kids, and I'm thick as shit when it comes to science. And yeah, I took all the classes. I was great in gym. Like gym was like my class I really excelled at. But like, in what other line of work would you get to do something like that? You know?
So you went to school for 2 weeks?
Yeah, the Bronx School of Science, yeah.
And none of the kids knew? Like, would you go eat lunch with the kids?
Yeah, I made friends. I was like a new exchange student. I had a backstory. I have videos on my phone. I actually have a video on my phone of a teacher throwing chalk at me because I was on my phone, because I was trying to document it all. I'll show you afterwards. It's actually nuts. But yeah, like that research stuff, like there's no world in where you could do.
Younger, newer to the Nolan world, still processing what he'd just been through. And some of the most fascinating material in the whole interview came from him talking about research. For Spider-Man, he secretly enrolled in the Bronx High School of Science for 2 weeks. Fake accent, a chaperone pretending to be his father, dropping him off every morning. He made actual friends. He attended real classes. He excelled in gym. He struggled badly in science. His words were something along the lines of, "I'm thick as a brick when it comes to science." And he has a video on his phone of a teacher throwing chalk at him for being on his phone while trying to document the whole experience. He described the research phase of acting as the thing he loves most about the job. The access you get that no one else in the world would be given. The sword fighting, the archery, learning a very specific physical skill from someone who has dedicated their life to it. Damon echoed that completely. He moved to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Something like that.
I bartended down in Knoxville, Tennessee to pick up an accent and did that for like a month.
Just for a month.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big break for me. It was in a Francis Ford Coppola movie, and I had a month to kill, and then we were going to have 3 weeks of rehearsals at, you know, in Napa Valley where he lived, and so I moved to Knoxville, and I just told the manager, this woman, just told her what I was doing, and so it was an extra bartender for her at no charge, right? So I was like, I'll give all my tips to these guys, and I just need to be here, because if you're serving drinks to people, and the guy was a bartender in the movie. But if you're serving drinks to people, they talk to you, and so you can.
Do you find if you immerse yourself that much into an accent that you find it harder to?
For a month to pick up a regional accent for a Francis Ford Coppola film. Walked into a bar, told the manager what he was doing, offered to work for free and give all his tips to the existing staff, and just embedded himself. He described it simply. If you're serving drinks to people, they talk to you. That's where the accent lives. Not in a dialect coach's studio, but in the actual room. Now let's talk about the shoot itself, because the accounts from everyone involved are borderline extraordinary. Pattinson described it as the most ambitious film he's ever been part of.
In my career, in my life, it felt almost nostalgic, like the first movie I ever got, you know, and everything was new and shooting on film, like learning all of this stuff, and everything was in camera. Everything was, you know, it was all on IMAX. So it was this new technology that, you know, had never been done for a full film. It felt like my one chance in my life to kind of make a David Lean movie.
Right.
You know, and it's like when you screened Lawrence of Arabia for us in the middle, it was such a great kind of midway through the shoot to look at that and go like, you know, God, man, this is
where we're at.
And this is what people used to have to do and did, and it's what made us all fall in love with cinema, and we're getting a chance to try to do something at this incredible scale that is really, really ambitious and requires every single person to kind of max out on, like, no department had it easy on this movie. No, it was, I've never seen a movie that was more ambitious to try to, I mean, this for me was definitely kind of the mountaintop. So I'm glad it came so far into my.
He called it his mountaintop. He said he was glad it came this far into his career because a younger version of him might not have been ready for it. When Nolan screened Lawrence of Arabia for the cast midway through production, using it as a North Star, a reminder of what cinema can do at scale, Pattinson said he sat there thinking, this is what people used to have to do, and did, and it's what made us all fall in love with film. Everything was in camera. Everything was shot on IMAX. Locations in Favignana, Italy, no road to the top of the mountain.
I think I said to Ben Affleck when I got back that every location on this movie would have been the hardest location on any other movie I've ever done, and any day of work would have been harder than any other day of work on any movie I'd ever done. I remember like pulling up in the ferry in Favignana and him pointing to the top of the mountain. He's like, that's where we're shooting. And you just start laughing. You're like, of course we are. And there's no road, you know, oh, we got to walk up. That totally makes sense. And walk down at the end of the day, you know, all together. And, you know, the grips are key. Building platforms like outside Zeus's cave in Pylos, like, you know, in the middle of a tree. Like, we had no business shooting in these places, and everybody knew it. And that was kind of this weird exhilaration that we all had, was at the end of every day, you'd be like, man, we made our day. Like, great job, everybody.
It was an adventure, like, every day. What do you think was your hardest day? Like,
that's funny. I remember Himesh said to me, we were in Iceland and it was night and it was like raining sideways on us. I mean, it was just drilling us. We were walking back to this ship that wasn't even a ship. It wasn't seaworthy. It was an art department creation that we just needed to be able to get on and off, all the guys. And it was like, it felt like it could go at any minute. But we're walking back, we're resetting, and Himesh said, do you think today is the hardest day of filming you've ever had in your career? And I said, I don't know, Himesh. I go, but if it wasn't, it was another day on this movie and you were there, so you tell me. Because we were in some crazy.
So the entire crew walked up every morning and back down every night. Platforms built outside ancient caves in Greece, ships that weren't technically seaworthy, art department constructions that needed to look right but couldn't actually sail, rain driving sideways in Iceland in the middle of the night. Damon recalled arriving in Favignana expecting a pleasant Italian shoot, nice hotel, beautiful setting. Then he saw the crew come back at the end of the first day and said it looked like people returning from the trenches. By Friday afternoons, everyone was just trying to get food and get to bed. The first AD on the film reportedly turned to Damon one day, somewhere in the middle of the ocean, and said, you know, every single person on this crew could be on an easier movie right now and making more money. And yet every single one of them had chosen to be there. Most were repeat Nolan collaborators. They knew exactly what they were signing up for. That culture starts at the top. Holland described something that stuck with everyone on set. During a 9-minute scene between Pattinson and Anne Hathaway, long takes, IMAX cameras, emotionally devastating material, they'd shoot, cut, and then wait 5 minutes for the camera to reload. And Pattinson stayed in it the whole time, fully in it, for hours. Holland said he wasn't even required to be there that day, but he couldn't leave.
Career.
Something I saw you do, and it's when you did your big scene with Anne towards the end of the movie. It's like a 9-minute scene. You're like lying there in tears. They cut. It takes 5 minutes to reload the camera, and you stayed in it the whole time. And you were in that state for hours because of the nature of the way we had to shoot the stuff. I didn't have to be there that day, but I remember sort of being like, I can't I can't leave. Like, this is unprecedented stuff that's happening right now. And to credit to Anne too, like she did the same, and they started on your coverage.
Yeah.
And she was bringing it on the other side before it was for me as a young actor to see two guys like really at the top of their game operating like that. And also, you know, it's not easy circumstances to be working with that camera.
That's cool. She was phenomenal.
But it's also like when you did the fight, when they were shooting the background guys who were reacting to your fight, and you'd been doing this fight for days. You've killed like 200 people by this point, and you're doing the full choreo, full out, hitting the ground. You guys really set the tone for us who were like working with Chris for the first time, working on a movie of this scale for the first time, of like what is expected and what is the work.
He described watching two actors operating at the absolute peak of their craft under extremely difficult technical conditions as one of the most formative experiences of his career. And then there's Nolan himself. Multiple people in this conversation mentioned the same thing independently. They have never seen a director who doesn't leave set.
Not at all. And I think the thing I admired about him the most, you know, beyond his talent and his leadership skills, is that this is the hardest job I've ever had in terms of like the workload, and I can only imagine what it was like for you. But he's there every day. He wouldn't ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. Like when we were hiking up that mountain.
No, he doesn't ask anybody to do anything that he's not going to do too.
No, not at all.
Saying that, he did come and tell me to hold this dog, which I was like, that dog is going to bite me. Like, you hold it. Like, he doesn't know what to be held. Like,
Yeah,
that was one of the scariest stunts I think I've ever done. It wasn't even.
Not once. Not to use the bathroom, not to get a coffee. He's there. He's watching. He's drinking black tea in impossible quantities, and he just doesn't move. He doesn't ask anyone to do something he wouldn't do himself.
I think Chris sets that tone. Like, I remember the first time I worked with him was Interstellar, and they were all up in Calgary and they were shooting. I think I shot 4 days on that movie. And there's a scene where Matthew and I, wrestle on a glacier. And they said, we need you to fly up to Calgary for rehearsal and fittings and things like that. I was like, great. So I flew up to Calgary and I got there. We went into this room and put on these spacesuits, and he had Matthew and I like fully wrestling in this, like months ahead of when, and I was like, okay, this is how this guy rolls. Like he's demanding of himself and everybody. I mean, it's all about the thing that he's trying to make. And I actually just rewatched Tenet, and I hadn't seen it except for the very first time I saw it, and I forgot how kind of emotional it is. At the end of that movie is I just love it just really walloped me. I was like, wow, I forgot.
He hiked up the mountain with the crew. He operated the clapperboard on a rocking boat in the rain. When the IMAX camera jammed in the middle of the ocean, Nolan's camera crew fixed it on the spot rather than turning back to shore. And Nolan just watched and trusted them to do it. Pattinson described his filmmaking philosophy as the opposite of the blockbuster machine.
And I think sometimes when I've been making the superhero movies, you sit in the meetings before the script has been written, and they have these big set pieces already that they want to try and somehow squeeze into the movie. And it always damages the character arc because the set pieces feel unnecessary. And I feel like Chris does the opposite of that, which is like, let's figure out the story and the arc of the characters first, and then the scale can be additive to that.
Also, the way he shoots, it really feels like an independent movie.
Totally.
Where you're shooting. It doesn't have any of that machinery, like you're saying, kind of overpowering it. It's, he has all the elements that he needs, and then he trusts his heads of department he doesn't know where the camera's going to go with Hoyte. They know what the grammar of the film is, right? And then they find the shot based on the rehearsal, and then the camera's there, and then you see like Neil with the Marine unit, like, get the boats in the back, and suddenly these sailboats just come into and so like by take 2, you've kind of got like all of these things coordinated and working together. And it's not prescriptive. He lets it be kind of organically grow out of and it feels very kind of run and gun and indie.
Not here are the set pieces, now write a story around them. Instead, figure out the characters first. Figure out the arc. Let the scale serve the story, not the other way around. And look, this conversation kept coming back to the same idea from different directions. Acting, at its core, is about belief. You believe in a director. You believe in a script. You believe in the story enough to read it to a cab driver at the end of a long day just to see if it lands. Pattinson literally did that multiple times, apparently. The best work in this industry doesn't come from the biggest budgets or the safest choices. It comes from people who spot something real in a premise, in a collaborator, in a moment, and commit to it fully. Sometimes that means enrolling undercover in a New York high school. Sometimes it means bartending in Tennessee for a month. Sometimes it means staying in an emotionally shattering scene for hours on a glacier while an IMAX camera reloads. The Odyssey sounds like all of those things at once, scaled up to the size of a mountain with no road to the top. The question is, when the film finally lands, will audiences feel the weight of what it took to make it? And does that weight even matter anymore in a world of unlimited digital spectacle? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want more deep dives into what actually goes into making the films Hollywood is building right now, subscribe to SnapCrazeHub. We go further than the trailer.